Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Kaga, and some time ago I put up a short video, well, maybe not so short video, on the Scharnhorst armor-piercing ammunition and how that performs. And one of my subscribers asked a question related to how that particular ship handles when it gets up-tiered. Well, as it turns out, I was searching through my replays folder, and it seems was particularly kind to me when I was using the Scharnhorst. So every time I found myself driving the ship, I was always in at most tier 8 maximum games, and I still want to. I have a particular replay that illustrates how it performs in that situation. But it did get me thinking, how does the Gneisenau perform at tier 9? Because that's, unless really hates you or your division mates hate you, that's pretty much all you're going to see in this very interesting tier 7 German battleship. You will note that I am currently divisioned up with a Scharnhorst. Now, I don't think I have the replay from his perspective, but I can tell you that this was not exactly a match we were looking forward to loading into it. And the reason got to do with the top tier enemy battleship on the enemy team. Well, I'll give you a hint. It's not in Iowa, and it's not in Izumo. That's right. We're going to be going head-on with a Friedrich der Grosse, the Tier 9 German battleship that was introduced in the same patch as the Gneisenau and the rest of the German battleships, with exception to, like, the Torpets and, of course, the Scharnhorst, which was released a little bit ahead of that patch. So, how do these two battleships tend to stack up? Well, it depends on how you look at the ammunition. If I was to characterize how the Gneisenau approaches this match, it's pretty typical battleship gameplay because of the 380mm caliber guns. They have reasonable penetration, reasonable damage, and you can do pretty well with armor piercing in this ship. So you don't need to switch to the high explosive all that often. Now, in this particular matchup, even the cruisers would pose a significant problem to a Scharnhorst using their 283mm guns. And you'd find that the captain of a Scharnhorst would probably be loading high explosive at long ranges. Not that you'd probably need it for that shot. So I think that relatively easy kill on that enemy Myoko would have still happened regardless of whether I was using this ship or the Scharnhorst. But anyway, this being the Northern Lights map, which is basically north with a fresh coat of green paint and some snow textures and, you know, a few other little odds and ends, is you have a couple of things that happen. It's usually the case that you have everyone with good range coming out here towards the 1-2 lines and duking it out. Now, I've more or less spied the existence of that ship. That is the profile of the Friedrich der Grosse at approximately 15 kilometers. I want to make a beeline out of here because it looks like he is in fact using those nasty 420mm guns. I don't know that for certain, but those guns looked a little bit off for 16-inch class guns. At least, you know, in that quick view you get when you hit the Z key in this game. And that's one of the neat tricks you can use if you're facing either the Friedrich Grosse or the Grosse Kurfürst, is to check which guns they are using at the time. You can always just lob a shot right on there. Don't expect to penetrate, but just follow the fall of shot with the Z, see what guns they're using, or what they appear to be using. You probably aren't going to get an accurate depiction of that unless you are one of those stat whizzes and memorizes the value loadouts when you get into the load-in screen. I don't like doing that because it removes from the overall experience in the game. And admittedly, if I knew which guns he was using, I probably wouldn't either be rushing him or being more aggressive or, heading for the hills. Either way, I'm not certain it would be a particularly good contribution to the match. And that's my thing about that. It's like one of my personal gripes. It's always I've always had this gripe when I've seen that that addition to the load-in screen in World of Warships, is that thing. It just tells too much about your enemies. I know it's one of those things people use to learn the game in some respects, but at the same time, it kills the immersion. At least for me, because I like that feeling of the unknown, that what you might call that fog of war. And for me, that is just one of those nice atmosphere things. I never like to assume that I have the upper hand, but yeah, that's me. Your mileage may vary. Let me know in the comments what you think about that little feature. And now we're going to get back to this engagement at hand. It's at this moment, and I really wish I had hit the record button on while I was playing this, because I was on voice comms with this particular person, and it was about at this time that I had heard him start cursing the long-range performance of his armor piercing, and he switched to high explosive and just started spamming everything with it. And I think that while on the European server, I've heard the Scharnhorst has a reputation for being a battering ram, on the North American server, it is essentially a flame spitter. And understandably so, if you look at the engagement distances that we are forced to consider at the extreme end of gameplay here. Yeah, you could do it, but only the amazing players would get any reasonable returns on the armor piercing at this range, at least out of the Scharnhorst. And yeah, I guess maybe it's my personal thing, is that unless they're completely bow on at that distance, I'd probably still be loading the armor piercing. But anyway, I kind of wish I had hit the record so that you could hear the battle as it's unfolding in our perspective. And I may start doing this a little bit more when I am divisioned up with this person, because it's very interesting how that ends up. And while not necessarily a regular segment, it's kind of interesting to hear how people talk and organize the flow of battle whilst in tactical units. I think that more than a lot of other things can be quite insightful. Now, I know I've talked about how some of my gripes to this point. I know I've talked a little bit about some of the performance of these two battleships. I know I've talked a little bit about some of the meta. So I'm going to digress a little bit here and backpedal towards the main topic of this particular video. And that's really is, how do these ships perform? Well, I think if I was to characterize it, it is more or less found in these quantities I've been discussing thus far. The understanding of the meta is, well, That's always important in battleships because that's part of your situational awareness. Understanding when you need to pull back, when you need to angle, where you should engage, who you should engage, is all part of that meta I'm talking about. And then maybe that was, I only talked about one part of it, but you know, that was the pertinent part here, because I kind of had a sneaking suspicion that this Friedrich would come down towards this area. I didn't have a great certainty until he popped up on, got the visual on him, like the actual hard visual of him. But I had that feeling that, yes, this is the place I would expect him, and we took our positions accordingly. We moved around, trying to go pull these guys into a better position for our team and for us to engage. And as you can see, I think that this understanding, more than anything else, can explain why in this particular battle, my Gneisenau was performing better than my div mate's Scharnhorst. Because, yes, I've got higher alpha damage, I've got better penetration, the gun handling is a tad bit better in my opinion on the Gneisenau in the engagement distances that we're rolling in, but I know where to place the shots. I'm looking at the way the ships are flowing, and I'm timing it so that that works. I think that more than anything, and I think that is the part that sometimes gets lost on these ships, is that it doesn't matter whether you're looking at the Gneisenau or the Scharnhorst. I think that they both have the potential to do very well when they're up-tiered. And I'm going to be trying to get back into the Scharnhorst in the next couple of days and actually show you the games from, in that perspective. But I need to actually consciously queue up in that and get back into my Bismarck and try to actually give you guys a opinion of how the upgrade path on that works. Working on that. More on that in a future video. And I think that the way that the Gneisenau works is, you know, it's if you have gone through 1 or 2 battleship lines before hitting this point, and I mean by going through, it's my personal definition of having gone through a line. It's not necessarily gone through to the top tier, in this case tier 10, but to have gone through 80% of the line. So let's say you have a North Carolina or an Amagi, or you have Tirpitz and Amagi, and you've played a fair number of games in them. I think that that experience would help you do very well with an Gneisenau. But if you don't have that experience, I think you can still make the Scharnhorst work, because you fire 3 rounds a minute. That is more than sufficient to keep someone burning from stem to stern, so long as you've played a fair number of cruiser games. Now I know that it's German, high explosive, and the fire chance isn't outstanding, but I think if you forego the secondary upgrade on that and you go for the main battery accuracy one, you could potentially do very well, so long as you are quite patient with your shots and you make certain that you give them the best lead possible and get them onto target. And in that respect, you basically have pick your poison between the two of them. You can have 8 in this, and again, I'm talking about in a tier 9 matchup. If you're in the Gneisenau, you're probably going to prefer using the armor piercing more often in this matchup, unless you like completely bow on to your enemy. Whereas in the Scharnhorst, you might consider using a higher percentage of high explosive, unless they're completely broadside to you, or they're showing you really unusual angles that you know you can hit. Now, again, this is one of those things, your mileage may vary and you will encounter your own tendencies, and apologies to my European subscribers. That is basically comes down to what is the meta on that server. I know on the North American server we tend to be a little bit more snipey. I know this. It just tends to be the case. I doubt that the Scharnhorst would have the high explosive spamming reputation that it does if that were not the case. But, oh hey! So apparently the Gneisenau can in fact kill a Friedrich der Grosse. Granted, I know I didn't do all of the damage to him, but I think we did a fair bit of that. So, not a kill steal. It's legit. Now, where was I? Where was I? Oh yes, the reputation of the Scharnhorst. Now, again, that comes back down to the meta on your server, but for us, it really is that it's the high explosive queen of tier 7, at least among the battleships. Now, I don't think that's a bad thing, really. I mean, it's one of the things that really and truly gets annoying is that, at least with this game, is that the ammo choices are relatively simple. You have armor piercing, you have high explosive, you have some ships that don't ever use anything more than their default one. Some don't use their high explosive, some don't use armor piercing. It'd be, and then maybe this is just a personal thing. I would like to see like shrapnel rounds introduced, phosphorus rounds, you know, interesting things. Do other unique types of damage, do different status effects, just have a different impact on the game than just, you know, binary. But yeah, personal opinion. Let me know in the comments if that's something that interests you. And I think this screen right here illustrates that both the Gneisenau and the Scharnhorst, even irrelevant of the captains, can do quite well even when they're up tiered. You know, you might not do that outstanding amount of damage performance when you're top tier, but no one expects that. You've been up tiered. You can still do well though. And I just wish people actually thought about it that way. There's way too much defeatism in these wargaming products. Way too much. So, a question for the regulars on the channel. Well, actually even newcomers. So, do you prefer this style of ending? Or do you prefer one I used in my last video? The link will be in the video description down below. So please check that out if you haven't already seen it. Please let me know. I really do want to try to mix things up now and then. I kind of want to know what you prefer. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's video. See you around the channel. And of course, hope to see you around Google+, Facebook, Twitter, all the good stuff. Links to those are in the description box as well. And of course, the feedback thread will be in the comments section down below. So, without further ado, I'd like to bid you a good day and happy gaming.